Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Marjorie Rollins, Executive Director for Health Data Standards at the Regenstrief Institute. And on behalf of Regenstrief and my LOINC colleagues, I'm pleased to welcome more than 700 registrants from 67 countries. That is amazing participation. Your strong turnout reflects the continued global momentum behind LOINC and our shared commitment as a community in advancing high-quality interoperable data. Again, welcome, and we are glad that you are here. It was the announcements. Next.
I wanted to present.
Okay. You might have to change it. I'm your host for today's webinar, and we also have a wonderful group of presenters joining us. April Lackey, Associate Director for Operations, Stephen Wagers, Director, Technical Services, and Isa Hafiza, Director, Terminology Services. April, Stephen, and Isa are colleagues from the Health Data Standards Division at Regenstrief, and each brings deep expertise across operations, technical services, and terminology development. We're also pleased to have Stan Huff with us today. Stan is co-chair of the LOINC Clinical Committee and a founding member of LOINC, and his leadership has been instrumental in shaping the vision and development of LOINC since the very beginning. In addition to today's presenters, we're fortunate to work alongside many talented colleagues across Regenstrief's Health Data Standard Division who contribute to this work every day. And among them are Timothy Briscoe, Systems Engineer, Joanne Lung, Business Analyst, Jennifer Pianki, Project Manager, Terminology Advisor David Biorto, and our clinical terminology developers, Elizabeth Lumakowska, Felicia Owens, and Jeffrey Rattimo. They represent the broader team whose expertise and dedication help ensure that LOINC continues to evolve and support a growing global community of implementers. We are grateful for their contributions and for the collaborative effort across the division that makes this work possible. Okay. Today's session is designed to keep you informed, aligned, and engaged with the latest developments across the LOINC community. We'll begin with a few brief announcements, followed by an overview of what's in the 2.82 LOINC release. We'll then move into community questions and the discussion segment. And I think we're all looking forward to that. I know that I am. In advance of today's session, we invited questions from all of you. And during this portion of the program, we'll highlight selected pre-submitted questions and share our responses. After that, we hope to have time for additional dialogue as time permits. So let's begin with some announcements from April Lackey.
Hello and welcome, everyone. We are very excited to announce the upcoming LOINC Conference taking place October 6th through 9th, 2026 in Cologne, Germany. This year's theme, Global Data Local Care, Advancing Smarter Standards, reflects our shared commitment to enabling high-quality, interoperable data that supports care delivery around the world. Our annual in-person gathering continues to be a premier forum for collaboration, learning, and community engagement. If you have innovations, implementation experiences, or lessons learned to share, we strongly encourage you to submit a proposal. The call for presentation proposals is currently open with a submission deadline of April 5th, 2026. For the past several years, we have hosted two significant community events, this webinar and our conference. The goal of these touch bases is to ensure our entire community can connect, learn, and stay informed. I am excited to announce our plans for a new addition to our community series, the LOINC Committee webinar. This is part of our ongoing effort to expand engagement and provide more opportunities for meaningful interaction with our community. This webinar will be dedicated to sharing accomplishments, current initiatives, and future objectives of our LOINC committees. Planning is still underway, and we are anticipating a summer date, likely June or July. As always, we will share announcements on our website and through email. We hope to see many of you on the LOINC Committee webinar, which will be largely guided by our LOINC Committee chairs, who you see here. These individuals bring deep subject matter expertise, insight, and a commitment to liaising with our community to help ensure LOINC content remains clinically relevant, up-to-date, and interoperable. We are excited to welcome Anil Patel as the new co-chair of the Document Ontology Committee, serving alongside Rob McClure. Anil has led the development of PCLOCD, the Pan-Canadian LOINC Observation Code Database, championing the adoption of the LOINC Document Ontology to support national interoperability. In a more bittersweet announcement, Ken Wang is stepping down as chair of the Radiology Committee. Dr. Wang led this committee for several years and has been instrumental in guiding the development of RadLabs in LOINC. We are sincerely grateful to Dr. Wang for his leadership and wish him all the best. In his stead, we are pleased to welcome Dr. Audrey Verde, who will begin as the LOINC Radiology Chair very shortly. Dr. Verde has been deeply involved with the Radiology Committee work, and we look forward to many more contributions. I will now turn back to Marjorie.
Thank you, April. Let's move to a high-level snapshot of LOINC version 2.2 that was released on February 18th. This release delivers approximately 1,100 new concepts, along with roughly 1,400 updates, reflecting continued growth in active stewardship across the LOINC terminology. Together, these additions and refinements help ensure that LOINC remains current with evolving clinical practice, developments in laboratory science, and emerging data needs across the global health community. So in the next few slides, we'll highlight key areas of focus within the release. And with that, I'm pleased to turn the floor over to Isa Hafiza to begin the update.
Thank you, Marjorie. I'm Isa Hafiza, Director of Terminology Services at Health Data Standards at the Regenstrief Institute. It gives me a great pleasure to share with you all the LOINC content key highlights. In the survey domain, we launched 18 new tools and for use in the health-related social needs area. We have added edits in post-acute care assessment program and added clinical assessment in neurology, general medicine, and mental health domain. For document ontology, new content was added to advance capture of clinical documentation in preventive care, emergency and forensic medicine, as well as in trauma, mental health, and oncology. New content in the laboratory domain was added to support a broad range of diagnostic and public health and molecular pathology and microbial genetic testing concept for bacterial and viral DNA and RNA. We created new environmental, food, and animal allergy testing concepts as well. We should not forget about panels supporting clinical and diagnostic workflows. Last and not least is in the clinical LOINC. We created high-volume content of diagnostic procedures like visual field measurement concept using static automated perimetry, as well as gastrointestinal endoscopic procedure reflecting evolving clinical practice, and clinical risk assessments in alcohol use and smoking status. These were our content highlights for release 2.82, and now it's time for my colleague Stephen Wager to present the technical highlights. Thank you for your attention. Stephen?
Yeah, thank you, Isa. Okay, a couple of highlights to mention. First, we've rolled out a new LOINC Translators portal, which is a streamlined web-based interface for international translation teams to receive content updates and submit translations. We've also updated the LOINC terminology detail pages with a new part model view. that clearly shows how each term is constructed from standardized components. And coming soon, we will be sharing a new artifact that will be included in future releases, the LOINC main version history. It will provide a rolling historical record dating back to 2020 of effective versions for changes to LOINC name values, including the fully specified name, short name, long common name, consumer name, and display name. Next. As always, the LOINC release is available at loinc.org/downloads. Free loinc.org account is needed to access those files. Next. Additional ways to access LOINC content include search LOINC and the LOINC API using HL7 Fire. And with that, I'll pass it back to Marjorie.
So let's move on to discussion about the LOINC Ontology. And with that, this work represents an important step in strengthening the semantic foundation of LOINC and advancing more computable, connected, and scalable data use across the global ecosystem. We continue to see strong interest and momentum in this area as the community looks for more powerful ways to represent relationships, support analytics, and enable interoperability at scale. And with that context, I'm pleased to turn the floor over to Stan Huff to walk us through those updates.
Thank you, Marjorie. I'm giving this presentation today, but I wanted to note also that we have on the call and will be available to answer questions in the question period. Peter Williams, Kelly Carew, Farzana Ashrafi, and Suzanne Santamaria from the SNOMED International team. And we're excited to collaborate with them. And I would say very first that we've really appreciated this collaboration. It's been a wonderful opportunity to work together. But for those of you who maybe you're not familiar with the LOINC SNOMED Ontology, the thought behind it is that we wanted to make the LOINC content available to people who are in a situation where they would like a SNOMED code to represent the concept rather than a LOINC code. And the second motivation really was to be able to reason and really make LOINC an ontology so that you could reason about it. And we'll talk about that a little later. But the idea then is that we're moving LOINC content, transforming it. And that's an important distinction, transforming it into the model of the SNOMED table representations, and then making that available to folks. And so there's an implementation guide that you can access, and we'll tell you a lot about that. But so we're expressing concepts in the SNOMED CT format, but they have both a SNOMED identifier and a LOINC identifier. So it's exactly the same meaning and concept, just with two identifiers to make it easy for people to choose the one that they need to use. So it's easier for implementers. It's a single solution, so we're consolidating the content and making it consistent across both systems. It's owned and maintained by Regenstrief, but obviously it's very cooperative, and it's been invaluable to work together with the SNOMED team to make the content consistent and well-formed and available through the SNOMED extension. Next slide. So there's an upcoming release. It'll be released 2.82. The we started off labeling things, version 1.0 and 2.0. And we're changing this time to say, keep basically the LOINC ontology consistent with the LOINC release that it's based on. So this will be LOINC Ontology 2.82. The release date is March 23rd. That release will have 45,000 total concepts, including 3,653 new concepts. In making this version of the ontology, we focused on the top 20,000 most used laboratory observations. And it is still restricted to laboratory observations in this version. Specific emphasis was given to coagulation tests in this version, which include clotting times, platelet aggregation, clotting factor assays, and clotting factor activities. And in doing that, we moved detailed information about the methodology out of the component part of LOINC into the method field of LOINC. And so that was a change. And then we also emphasized microbiology susceptibility tests. And in this version, we moved the concentration of the antibiotic out of the component part out of the component part into the method part. So those were two changes, and I think we mentioned that again later as well. Next slide. As we go along, I won't focus on this very long, but besides sort of those major additions of concepts, this activity really serves to clarify the meaning of concepts in both systems. It makes us pause and think, well, what does direct bilirubin really mean? Is that the same as glucuronidated bilirubin? Is parathyroid or parathyroid hormone, more commonly called, intact, and parathyroid biointact the same? Are narcotics the same as opioids? So it leads to clarifications that are important, and this is a sample of those kind of things. But as you might imagine, in this version, we probably asked 30 questions like this to make sure that we knew and understood what the concept meant. Next. So this is just kind of to say that what we're doing, as you can tell, is that we're moving through different versions, creating new versions of the ontology. And we want to talk for a minute about and actually solicit input about what we should do in the next version. Next slide. So in this, one of the things is an expected transition, if you will, was that the early versions, we depended a lot. I say we, the LOINC team, depended a lot on the SNOMED group for mapping, for templates, for basically explaining to us all the nuances of the SNOMED database, etc. And so what's happening now is that LOINC is taking on more of the responsibility for mapping SNOMED concepts, for creating or asking, requesting for new concepts through the concept request system, creating the templates that actually map from the LOINC parts to the machine readable concept model within SNOMED, and other things that are coming along. But next slide, that opens then the opportunity for us to ask, what do we want to do? It's really up to us now as LOINC to ask the whole international community, what are the things that would be more important to add to the SNOMED ontology going forward? And so things that we've talked about, kind of on our list of potential ideas is that there would be, we could start adding high priority clinical observations like height and weight and, blood pressure and heart rate and all of those kind of things. We could add binding of value sets or answer lists to nominal LOINC codes. So feel like urine color right now exists in the ontology, but there's no binding to the value set that would say what are the allowed values for urine color, like amber, straw, red or bloody, that kind of thing. So that's another thing. Another is the document ontology, which we haven't added any of that yet to the LOINC ontology. And that's work that's being led by Rob McClure, and that might be something that people are interested in. Fourth thing, we've been working hard on survey instruments, especially in social determinants of health and other areas, but all kinds of survey instruments like Braden scale and APGAR scores and PHQ-4 and PHQ-9 and those kind of things, and whether those things would be valuable and important. We have all of the radiology concepts that the radiology concepts are both used for ordering radiology procedures as well as naming the report that comes from those procedures. And so those, we'd be very interested in whether people think that would be something important to do. Infrastructure wise, calculations don't fit very well into our current designs, and whether that's something we should work on, or should we just do more lab or more genetics. So we want to know how you would rank these items, and so what we're going to do right now is we're going to put up a poll or a survey and give you a chance to vote on these things. So down the left-hand side, you have kind of the topic, and then across you have questions about whether this thing is critical or high priority or medium or anyway. So you can take
So some of you may need to expand the poll screen by dragging on the bottom or the sides, so you get the full picture. And then as Stan indicated, across the top, you have a column for highest priority, it's critical to do, things that are important to do soon, very soon, and then sort of we should do them at some point, so we would schedule it out, and then things that are not important at all. And then there should be an option for if you don't have an opinion at all. The last listed item is called other, and that is if you have a thought of what is something that is not included in the list that Stan shared, please rank that in the other column as whether it's high, critical, important, and then use that text box to explain what other is. So we'll give folks a couple of minutes. And if you have any troubles with this survey, we'll also send it out at the end so that you can complete it then as well. So we see responses coming in. And let's see, we've got, we're only at about a 30% response rate, less than 30%. So we'll give it a minute or two. It's a complex question, so.
Do you want me to home the Jeopardy theme? We really do want your input. That's one of the things that I worry about, is that we're making things sometimes and we don't have a really good feedback loop to know whether we're making things that are most important. So we'd love everybody to participate, so we know what to focus on.
Okay, we've got about 40, mid-40s%, Stan. Is that a good end for you?
That's a pretty good sample.
Okay, so we're gonna end the survey, and then again, if you just needed more time to think through it, or if you want to, digest everything that Stan said and respond later, that's perfectly fine. This link will go out, or a link to the survey will go out at, the end of the webinar. Okay, you ready to move on?
Okay, yep. Next.
All
Okay,
right.
back to Marjorie.
All right, thank you, Stan, and thank you everyone for taking the survey. We look forward to reviewing your responses. We'll now move into our community questions and discussion segment. In advance of today's session, we invited questions from you from across the LOINC community. We appreciate your strong engagement and your thoughtful submissions that we received. So during this portion of the program, we'll highlight selected pre-submitted questions and share our responses. And time permitting, we will hope to take some additional questions from you. Our goal is to ensure this remains a transparent and responsive dialogue with you, the community we serve. We appreciate your engagement and look forward to the discussion. So let's begin. Stephen.
Right. The first question we have is, how do I submit new LOINC terms, and what kind of data / information is necessary? Currently, there are 2 ways to request new LOINCs. First is our web form. It's the easiest, walks you through each step, and it's good for those that are new to LOINC. Second is our Excel templates. These are better for certain domains such as radiology and surveys. This method is also good if you're submitting a large number of concepts. Either way, get started at loinc.org/request. If you would like to suggest an edit to an existing concept, you can go to loinc.org/contact to submit that request.
If you are in need of requesting new LOINC content, this is a very simplified process. There are 2 steps from your end and 1 step that is complex on our end. First, you go ahead and you use search LOINC to search for the content or for the concept that you are interested in. If it is there, you don't need to do anything. If it needs edit, then you are welcome to submit. And if it is not there, definitely you're gonna include it in your submission form. The next step is to submit through our website. And the third step is that it's our job to review the submission. The outcome of that review would be, in case there is a duplicate submission, then we are not gonna create that concept and will be notifying you. If there is no need for a clarification, which is very helpful for our terminology developer to use in order to create the concept, then we'll create that concept and we'll notify you about the creation of the new content. In case there is a clarification needed, which means we don't have enough information to go forward and create that concept, then there are 2 things that can happen. Either one of the Regenstrief team will be reaching out, requesting additional information, or we're gonna escalate the issue, which means that even with the information provided, we still need an input from one of our committees that help us in making decision and help advising us. And we'll invite you to join that discussion to also see the dynamic and maybe provide some additional information that could be helpful to create such concept.
All right. The next question we received is, what is Regenstrief doing to reduce the turnaround time for LOINC request, and how can we help? All right, so this is a complicated answer, but I'll go through each one. First, we're moving to monthly releases. This will allow us to focus on smaller chunks of work and accelerate our pace once we establish that rhythm. Secondly, we're integrating AI into authoring processes. We're exploring AI to help with data cleanup and QA, and we eventually plan to integrate it into the submission process. Third, we're enhancing the submission portal. We're working on improvements to streamline submissions and communications, reducing the reliance on separate submission templates and emails. And finally, how can you help? First and foremost, search for existing concepts first. Secondly, use the established processes such as the online form and email templates, and ensure that the submissions include as much data as possible and that the information provided is accurate. And with that, I'll pass it to Margaret.
So I want to add that since LOINC was first launched in 1994, you should know that the volume and complexity of requests for new content and updates have grown exponentially, reflecting the expanding role of standardized data in clinical care, research, public health, etc. We view this growth as a strong indicator of LOINC's global value and adoption. And at the same time, the development, review, and long-term stewardship of high-quality LOINC content is a resource-intensive process requiring sustained subject matter expertise and a very strong acumen of the clinical terminologies, administrative code sets, and nomenclatures, how they are distinctly different and all work together. We also need a strong bench with software engineering expertise, quality assurance, and infrastructure support. And all of that works by having an operations team that keeps everything running smoothly. So like many mission organizations or initiatives, our resources are limited to continue to meeting your needs as a community while concurrently maintaining the rigor and reliability that you as users expect. The content requests that are larger or highly specialized may best be addressed through dedicated funded collaborations or focused project support. These collaborations enable us to accelerate work in priority areas aligned with your specific implementer needs, while ensuring that the quality, consistency, and long-term integrity of LOINC are preserved. I'll end here by stating that it's important to know that we remain deeply committed to transparency, collaboration, and working with you, the community, to identify the most effective paths forward. So with that, I think I'll turn it back to Stephen.
All right. Thank you. All right, the next question we have is, how do I automate updates from prior LOINC releases to the latest version? Every environment is different. Maintaining your environment is ultimately up to you, the user. There are many vendors that provide services to distribute updates and or help maintain your systems. If you are doing it on your own, work with your IT department to develop processes for staging, reviewing, and ingesting updates into the correct systems. With that said, we do provide resources with each release to help. There's diff reports, update tracking files, and change snapshots. And more information on how to utilize those files are available in their respective readmes in the LOINC distribution. All right, and next question is, how do I find LOINC codes? The best method to search and view LOINC is SearchLOINC, available at loinc.org/search. We released the new version in June of 2021 as a replacement for the old online LOINC search application. Our goal in rebuilding SearchLOINC or to give a better user experience and utilize more current technologies. Please note that it does require a free LOINC login to access. We do have a comprehensive search guide available on our online knowledge base. And we also have a link to a search syntax quick reference card that you can download and print at home. And finally, LOINC.org houses a lot of resources to help search and learn. A few of those resources include the LOINC Knowledge Base, which I already mentioned, a quick start guide, recommended readings, mapping guides, LOINC Fire terminology server documentation, and much more. And with that, I'll pass to Dr. Stanley Huff.
Thanks. So the first question that I've been asked to address is, how are LOINC and SNOMED being used together? That's a great question. Oversimplifying a little bit, LOINC codes are establishing the context of what this measurement or this observation is about. And if the LOINC code, could be representing a numeric measurement or some other kind of measurement, but if it's representing something that has a coded value, then other terminologies come into play as the value of that data element. And so if you're talking about, for instance, ABO blood type, there would be a LOINC code that says, essentially this field contains information about the patient's ABO blood type. And then the value of that field would be a SNOMED code that's, would say type O or type A or type B. And there's a similar relationship to other terminologies that are, drug terminologies or diagnosis terminologies, genes, bacteria, viruses, etc. And so with a lot of those things exist in SNOMED itself as well. So, the best thing is if those other codes already exist in SNOMED. So next slide just shows graphically a little bit more about this. If this is an old HL7 version 2 message, and the first part of the message basically says this is a coded element that is going to tell you that there's going to be a code as the value of this item. And then the next part is saying, okay, the LOINC code then for blood group is 883-9, and part of the message structure says that's a LOINC code so that people know how to find that code and understand it. And then the next part is the actual value. So this is whatever was found in testing to be the patient's blood group. And that is the SNOMED code. And so that's the way that those two codes work together in representation of data. We're going to talk about just a little later about the relationship between these codes too and SNOMED, other SNOMED concepts. So next. So next question, how do I use LOINC codes properly? So there's a lot to say about that. And I guess I would hasten to say, maybe apologetically, that people think that LOINC codes are hard, but actually what's hard is reality is hard. Representing the complexity of what's in the real world is hard. And so it takes some knowledge and some experience to use, whether you're using LOINC codes or SNOMED codes, it takes some time to know and understand. So the first thing though to note is that the codes are always used in a particular syntax, whether that's HL7 version 2 or FHIR or the clinical document architecture or DICOM, etc. And so you need to know and understand where the code fits into a message syntax or into a data structure. And for instance, a lot of LOINC codes can be used as an ordering code or as the result code for different tests, for instance, in the laboratory or in clinical environment. But there's enough to know about this that, we provide a LOINC tutorial at the annual LOINC meeting. And so that could be useful. Those recordings of those tutorials are available. There are also 7 mapping guides that are available on the LOINC website that drill into things like how do I map microbiology things, or how do I map clinical chemistry things, etc. there are always issues to be aware of in terms of pre and post coordination, and I'll mention more what I mean about that in a couple of subsequent slides. But again, it's really important to distinguish the use of LOINC, and for that matter, SNOMED, for instance, from ICD-9 codes, where ICD-9 codes, you map to the closest code, or you map to a code that says, some general name, like diabetes mellitus, not otherwise specified, or something like that. That's not the style in LOINC. With LOINC, you need a code that says exactly what you need it to mean. And if it doesn't exist, you need to ask for a code that does. So don't ever use codes that are sort of close to what you want. Always ask for a code that means exactly what you need. And then final caveat is that you may need to ask an expert for help, because there's a lot to know about how to do this properly. Next slide. So just to show a little bit more about, the context of use, for instance, with fire observation resource, you have this overall outline of the fire resource. If we focus on some of the key fields in that, next, you have, a subject and a code and a value. It's back to that name value pair style. Next. And then if you fill that in, you have a subject identifies the patient that this test was done on. And then you have the LOINC code. In this case, it's the systolic blood pressure. And then you have a value with the associated units of measure. And so that's overall how, the LOINC code fits into the fire observation structure, at least. So just another example there. Next. So what LOINC model changes have occurred in this release? I mentioned these earlier, but just reiterate here. For the coagulation tests, we moved method and technique information out of the LOINC component field into the LOINC method field. And for antibiotic susceptibility test, we moved the concentration of the antibiotic that was used in the test, again, from the component into the method field. And you can see, for instance, if, instead of being amikacin 12.0 milligrams, and then for slow growing mycobacteria, now it's just amikacin, but it says we did that with the antibiotic concentration, and that part is now in the method part of the LOINC code. Next slide. So how do I make optimal use of search functionality in the hierarchy of the LOINC ontology? So the short answer, and then I'll give a couple of examples, is you need to become proficient in SNOMED expression constraint language, which is really the query language used within all of SNOMED, and also available and useful in the LOINC SNOMED extension. So I'm going to combine my examples into the next question in terms of helping people to understand. A related question was, what is a use case for the LOINC ontology and how would I use it? So the global answer is one of the real values of the SNOMED LOINC ontology is that you can, if you load the LOINC ontology on top of SNOMED International, then you're able to use all of the relationships that exist in SNOMED International to reason about the concepts that are in the LOINC ontology. So you can do things that you can't do natively against LOINC. So you could say something like, ask question, find all tests that indicate active hepatitis B, where, what you're really looking for are things that have antigens of hepatitis B, DNA of hepatitis B, or rRNA of hepatitis B. Or you can do something like find tests for active Neisseria gonorrhea infection, and that could be a culture or rRNA or DNA, and then in a specific location of the uterine cervix. Or you can find all tests that can detect opioid use or that are used to monitor therapeutic use. So next slide, to just be a little more specific about this. What's happening is that you start off in the ECL query and you say, I'm looking for observable entities where the component of that observable entity is DNA of Neisseria gonorrhea. And then, or I want things where the component is ribosomal RNA of Neisseria gonorrhea. Or fourth, the component itself just says Neisseria gonorrhea, and where the direct site is a specimen from the uterine cervix. So that will get you back 5 concepts that represent active gonorrhea, and it's crossing, different aspects of LOINC, but the commonality is that those things then are listed as part of the component and then in a specific location. So you can reason about this in a way that you can't reason directly against LOINC for. Next slide. And then even a better example, maybe this is probably my favorite example, is if you wanted to know what are all of the observations where the component is an organism that causes a sexually transmitted disease. And in this case, you're saying, okay, I'm looking for an observable entity, and I want the component to be, and then you've got a complex expression, which basically the expression says, I want you to find all of the things that are sexually transmitted diseases. And so SNOMED knows that by relationships in the SNOMED database. And SNOMED also knows for each of those diseases, the organism that causes that infection. So that big parenthetical kind of expression is saying, give me the list of all organisms that are causes of sexually transmitted diseases. And you're giving that list to the bigger outer query that's saying, find me all observable entities that have that organism as the component. And then there's a little bit of cleanup that happens because there are some sort of major class things that get included in that first query that you want to take out. But you're taking advantage of the fact that SNOMED knows all of the sexually transmitted diseases, and it knows the organisms that cause those. And then you can use that as a way of selecting things out of LOINC by asking for things that have those components as the query. So that's a good example of what this is, the power that's created in the LOINC ontology. Next slide. So explain how to request updates to the LOINC ontology. Next. So you follow the submission request, that procedure that was previously explained. And then you can ask for the new code to be prioritized for addition to the LOINC ontology. So that, that's part of the input that we were asking for earlier, is what's important. Let us know what's important. And then that new concept then will get in the transformation process will get mapped to SNOMED concepts. And then those concepts get arranged into the SNOMED database file and representation. And then the new code will appear in the next release of the LOINC ontology. So that's a fairly straightforward way to get new codes into the LOINC ontology. Next slide. So there were multiple questions that were sort of related to the same issue. One was, regarding LOINC and SNOMED hierarchies, what will be the impact on LOINC codes regarding definitions of, for instance, method? And then another question kind of related is, what is a method? For instance, is high sensitivity or a detection limit a method? And even a further question, why do two LOINC codes exist if the method of analysis is actually the same? And that's a backdoor way of asking about things that say this was done by GCMS and it's confirm, or it's GCMS and screening. And they're saying, why do we got two LOINC codes where the analytical method was identical? So next slide. So the answer is, first of all, that this question is really independent of LOINC and SNOMED. It's really a question of information modeling and being able to separate out things. And the big thing to note is that the LOINC method field over the last 30 years has become overloaded. And when I say overloaded, what I mean is that there are more specific meanings, and people are combining things that are really different things into the method field. So the original sort of intent of the method field was about the analytic method, if you will, I did an immune assay, or I did GCMS, or I did aggregometry, or electrophoresis, or ion sensitive electrode, that kind of thing. That's a very different thing than saying screen and confirm. So screen and confirm is expressing that in some way you validated the test result, but that could have been done, it could have been done by two different methods, or it could have been actually just repeating the test on the same specimen, or it could have been getting a second specimen from the patient. So it's really categorizing the fact that you've done some mechanism to screen or confirm, but that's really different than the analytic method. There are also thresholds that are included. And again, the analytic method is the same, but in different circumstances, you can say, I want to call this positive or negative based on a particular cutoff. And that then is really different than the analytic method as well. And there are similar kinds of things going on for high and low sensitivity tests. Again, that's a categorization made by some outside group or by just clinical knowledge to say this, we know this test is more sensitive than this other test, but that's different than the analytic method. And then there are things that are also being said in the method that say this method is conformant to like the International Federation of Clinical Chemistry, or something that's coming from SAPSHA. And that's different again. It's now claiming conformance to an outside standard rather than, if you will, the analytic method. And so the first thing is recognizing that those things are all different meanings. And right now they reside in method, and we recognize that that is not the best representation for the information. Next slide. So it has been recognized, and for instance, the laboratory LOINC committee that is led by Pam Banning, they've taken that issue on for the set of things that had to do with confirm and screening, and basically making sure that there were codes that had a method that just referred to the analytic method, and then codes that had just screen and confirm that was independent of the method that was used. So that's one action that's been taken. But we need to do more, and we need to create new concept models. We need to separate out and give names for each of those different things that are currently being loaded into the method field, and make those separate and distinct and clear to people what their purpose and meaning is relative to the primary measurement. And that leads to talking about then the value of post-coordination for those kind of things in messages. Next slide. So post-coordination really means that you have one field that contains all of the information for things if it's pre-coordinated, So it would be like amphetamine screen, that would be a pre-coordinated concept. Or pre-coordinated concept would also be that amphetamines confirm less than 200 milligrams or greater than 200 nanograms per ml, et cetera. But that top most amphetamine has that curly brace syntax that says screen or confirm. That really says that that concept is meant to be used with different information, that screen confirm information in a different field in the data instance. So next slide. In just showing then if we're talking about this is kind of pseudo fire observations. In the first instance, we've got a code that says amphetamines presence in urine confirmation, blah, 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 of greater than 200 nanograms. And the post-coordinated representation, the one that's labeled as preferred on the right-hand side, you have that more generic LOINC code. And then what you have screen confirm, and for screen confirm, you have, oh yeah, this is a confirmatory test, and the threshold, which is greater than 200 nanograms per ml, and then the real analytic method, which is GCMS. So that post-coordinated representation now, all of those things are, all of the same information is represented in the data instance, but all of those things are not now compounded into one method field. They each have their own field that says exactly what they mean. So next slide. So again, kind of two parts of a question that was submitted is Regenstrief exploring a way to streamline the use of LOINC for modern health information system charting. While the specificity of LOINC is essential, it makes writing custom tools aggregating information progressively more infeasible. Is there any exploration of equivalency, for instance, two methods for the same analyte with similar output values? I've looked up some of the simplest tests and found too many related tests to even understand the differences at times. So that's a great question. It's a hard question. I'll do my best to try and explain this. So as was noted, it's really important. The differences actually are important. They're not always important in only one use case. So sometimes things are important for clinical care that are not important for research use of the data, and vice versa. Sometimes you need some more information for research data than what you need for clinical care. But so the differences are important. And so the solution isn't to have fewer LOINC codes and ignore the differences, because that'll just confuse everything. But in terms of then supporting aggregation in a more simple way, there are things that, for instance, previous example, you can group things now when they're in the LOINC Ontology, because you can use the concepts that are in the SNOMED International Edition that will help you then aggregate concepts from LOINC in queries. If you use post-coordination for the method and some other attributes, and I'll show an example of this, then it simplifies it, and I'll explain that a little bit when we're looking at the actual example. But the other thing, and I'm not sure if everybody is aware of another file that's actually called the group file. You correct me if I'm wrong, Stephen, if it's got a different name, but I always just call it the group file. But what the group file does is allows you to establish a group concept and then list the members of that group. And it's meant to be use case specific. So if people need one group of things that are permissible for research, they can have a different group than people who need this to be grouped for clinical care, or if they need to know the things that can all be charted together on a graph, etc. Next slide. So this is an example, for instance, and I think this is the kind of thing that the question was asking about. If you look at gonorrhea DNA, there are, what is that? I don't know, 10 or so codes. And they're varying based on where the specimen came from. And some of them are varying based on whether you did probamp tar or probamp sig for the actual method. And so if you really just want to know, you know, whether this patient has Neisseria gonorrhea DNA, right now what you would have to do basically is make a list that said, oh, when I go looking for Neisseria gonorrhea, this is the list of things that you actually need to look for in terms of codes. And so it makes you look for 10 LOINC codes to get the thing you wanted, which is not convenient. So what pre and post coordination does here, basically, again, coming back, is that top line that's highlighted and it says new, says we need a code that says Neisseria gonorrhea, and it allows it basically is saying, and this code should be used in a post-coordinated way with where the specimen came from and what the DNA identification method was. Next slide. So in the data instance, again, you know, you've got again the pre-coordinated codes on the left-hand side, but what we would prefer and what would make use of the LOINC codes much easier is that you represent Neisseria gonorrhea DNA test as a single concept. But then what you have down below is you have specification, oh, but this was on a genital specimen and it was done by probe amplification. And then you have the actual result. But what that means is because you use that more generic code in post coordination with the other things, you sort of have your cake and eat it too. So that means that, you know, regardless of the specimen type or regardless of what which kind of probe amplification I did, I can find all Neisseria gonorrhea DNA results by looking for one LOINC code. And then if it's important to me, I can then look at the things that were returned. And if I only want the things that came from a genital specimen, I would basically say, give me all Neisseria gonorrhea DNA results where the system is a genital specimen or where the method was AMPTAR. And so use of more generic codes then leads to the ability, it simplifies the number of LOINC codes you need, especially when you're querying and trying to group and aggregate things in the analysis. So I hope that's helpful. And I think now, that's the end of where I am. Is there another one for me? All right, we're back to Isa.
Thank you, Stan. Our next question is, does LOINC have codes to reflect the recent guideline changes for cervical cancer screening? I want to make sure and emphasize that the guideline changes are critically important. I have to share with you when one of a very dear mentor of mine was looking at me when we read that question and said, guideline changes monitoring. Do you know how many changes happen to each guideline across the clinical spectrum? So for that, the answer is a lot. And for that reason, we look out to you, our community. We depend on you to share such update to clinical guidelines. These changes are very important and they have a major and significant impact on the clinical care, laboratory testing, and all the related data standards. So what we are requesting is that along with the guideline updates, to please share with us and let us know about any LOINC code that are existing, but they need or they are affected by the changes. Also, any other elements that may require a LOINC code that is new and not existing in LOINC to accurately represent these updated guidelines. On our end, after we review the information that you have shared with us, we may reach out because we need some additional information or clarification. And in other cases, this issue may be presented to one of our LOINC committees for review. And at that point, we will invite you to participate in that discussion. Along that line, I want to share with you one of the cases that we deal with, these are situations that not unusual for us. We deal with it all the time. An example was happened with the National Kidney Foundation when the foundation reached out to us to share that the guidelines for calculation of the estimated glomerular filtration rate had changed. And the change was specifically that the race-based coefficient was removed from that calculation. This meant that our existing loan code 62238-1 and 48642-3 that are represented in the slides here, these ones are based on using the race-based coefficient, are not recommended for that use because they include specifically the race-based coefficient in the calculation. So the action that we took on our end is that we kept these two loan codes active. Why? Because there are still users who are keeping the use of these codes, but to support the National Kidney Foundation in their practice, we created a new concept LOINC, which is the 98979-8, so that labs that are calculating the eGFR without the race-based coefficient use the correct code. So based on this example and the previous question, I really strongly want to emphasize with you that your reaching out to us is very important. Please reach to the Regenstrief to submit for any guideline changes, new and added at any point, and help us capture them for you and for the community as well. Next question. Thank you. Are there plans to include new loan code for French standardized medical document? This is also the same, I would like to address it with the same answer like it was from the previous. Please reach out to us. We would not know about it from our own, but with your help, we are very much happy to add this content for you, for your use, but you need to reach out to us through the submission process that we have previously discussed. Next question, please. Are there plans to update the consumer-friendly names? The background on this project is that the Consumer-Friendly Names Project, it was launched to create loan names that are easier for patients and consumers to understand and to use. The current status on this project is that because the support for this project declined and the work was placed on hold at that point. So this project, we kept those names in the concept that were created, but we are not providing maintenance or adding to new ones except for the newly loan concept created or the one that we are actively updating. For future consideration, there are no current plans on our end to restart the project, but if there is sufficient community interest and support, Regenstrief would be very much open to reconsider this effort. Back to you, Marjorie.
All right, so I want to thank everyone for their questions and all of our presenters for their very thoughtful answers. I will now open the floor for any additional questions from you, the audience. If you have a question you'd like to pose, please enter it into the Q&A panel and we'll respond to as many as time permits.
Here's a question we received. I believe it's geared towards Stephen for answering. For the new monthly releases, will be as it is today as a whole new release or only the new LOINCs? In other words, will entities have to load a whole release monthly?
Yeah, our intention right now is for it to be a whole new release, and not just like deltas. How you load that is ultimately up to you. Like I mentioned before, we do provide, we will continue to provide the change snapshot and update files to help with that, to help manage those. And we can look into supplementing that later once we get more feedback from our release cycles changes.
Here's another question. I believe this came in during Stan's portion, so it may be geared toward something Stan can answer. maybe I missed something here, but I saw system instead of sample type in the code just shared. Should we be looking for system or sample?
So, system is the name of the LOINC axis. When you're talking about system for laboratory things, it's the specimen or the sample. It's the difference between, I guess, what it means in context and what the LOINC axis name is. So the LOINC axis name is a system. And in common parlance, it's the specimen or the sample. And in LOINC, it's the direct site in the machine readable concept model. So that's what that means.
Okay, and here's another question I think is along maybe the same lines as we're talking about the LOINC codes. If we have data using old LOINC codes, is there a preferred methodology for converting to new preferred LOINC codes?
So, I mean, I can address that too. There are two different situations. One is you want, if you're using the LOINC code, and then, well, yeah, you've got old LOINC codes and a new LOINC code comes out that replaces it. It could be, one thing you need to do is you want to have the new code be represented now in new data when new data is created. So you need to put that in place there. And then the question might refer to, what am I supposed to do with the old data? And that's up to you, because the old LOINC code will always be in LOINC. It will be identified as either discouraged or deprecated, but you'll always know the meaning of that code. And you don't always want to change the old code to the new code, because the new code may have basically there may not be an exact correspondence. So one situation that happens when we make new LOINC codes is that we realize an existing code was ambiguous, meaning that it has two possible different meanings. And so when there's a new code, you can't, for new data, you can say what the new data really means, which meaning was intended. For the old data, you probably don't know. And so you're probably safest to leave the old data the way it is, but just correct new data, and then recognize if you're doing analytics, recognize whether, depending on your use case, you can include kind of the old ambiguous concept as well as the new concept, or whether in fact you really can't do that kind of analysis because the data is not equivalent between the past data and the current data, if you will. So I don't know, maybe you could ask a clarifying question if that didn't scratch the itch.
We received a number of comments, and I'm not sure if we have the opportunity to address all of them, but I do want to bring up one comment that was added by Pam Banning, the chair of our laboratory committee. Just echoing Stan's comments about the group file. She says, the group file mentioned by Dr. Huff has a great potential in a variety of use cases. At last year's conference, there was a presentation on continuous document improvement and the use of the LOINC groups. So we appreciate Pam for that vote of support. And I welcome anyone else to enter their questions and or comments into the QA as well. We have some time remaining here.
So there's a question from Andrea that says, LIS, LIMs, LIMS and LISs and EHRs other kinds of health technology don't have the capability for storing that. And that's true. And to make it clear, or to say even more, we will continue to make pre-coordinated codes where they're needed. I would say what our theory is, or what we're trying to do, is enable people who can do post coordination to do so, because in the long term, it's a better representation. It's more flexible, easier to maintain, and greater power when you're doing analytics. But we're not saying that we're doing away with pre-coordinated concepts. We'll continue to make pre-coordinated concepts where they're needed. We're not deprecating pre-coordinated concepts. Those will continue to exist to support other systems, but we want to make it possible for people who want to improve their system to be able to do post coordination and use LOINC codes successfully in that context. So I appreciate that comment, Andrea.
There was also a question that we answered offline, or within the question and answer, that I think is worth mentioning to the group. Was asked when our monthly release is expected to begin and what part of the month will they be released. Stephen offered an answer to that. We're targeting late 2026 or early 2027 to begin the start of our monthly release processes. We're still early in the process of implementing our infrastructure needs to support moving to monthly releases. We'll have more information to share at the LOINC conference in October. A couple other questions have come in, and I think this is another question for Isa and or Stan. For future LOINCs, are we going for method-specific LOINCs or one with no methodology, generic?
Yeah. So we want to have both. We always want to have the more generic one for the purpose of being able to do post coordination and simplifying that meaning, if you will. And we'll create pre-coordinated codes when they're needed. So they will both be there. The pre-coordinated codes, oftentimes the pre-coordinated codes are easier for ordering. And then as Andrea pointed out, the pre-coordinated codes are more directly supported in the current systems. So we'll continue to make both. We want to enable, and I mean, we would encourage, I think we would, or at least my opinion is, the best practice for clinical care and for long-term secondary data use is to post-coordinate the data. But it'll take us some time to get there, and so we want to support people who are, if you will, working with the pre-coordinated world, and support those folks while we enable people who want to do it in what I would say is the more preferred method, so that they can move forward with that while other people are continuing to use the pre-coordinated codes.
On the topic of post coordination, there's another question that came in. I understand on how to implement post coordination, parentheses, system and method, on syntactic structure, CDA and FHIR. Can you provide how should we work for screen and confirm examples, as I know syntactic standards can't represent threshold and detection limit as part of operation data element?
Yeah, so what you want to think about, or the way that you can do this in existing systems. So a lot of systems have those as separate fields actually in their data. But the way you can do it is treat it like a battery. So think of it like a Chem 7, where a Chem 7 contains a sodium and a potassium and a chloride and glucose. But instead of the battery containing those other elements, you make a battery that has, if you will, the primary measurement that says, you know, what the comment was, and then it has if you will, it has a second observation. You know, in the second observation would be, well, what's the confirm and screening status of this item, and or another field that would say, what is the threshold? And so that's represented in the database in the same way that you would represent, for instance, for blood pressures, you wanted to represent the patient's position at the time of the measurement. And in this in lab systems, then you just make a battery. It's a simple battery that says, here's the primary thing, you know, here's the serum sodium or the cholesterol or the you know, whatever the primary analyte is. And then you have other fields in the battery that say, what's the confirmed status? What's its conformance status to IFCC standards? What is its threshold that was used in measuring this guy? So there are mechanisms within existing systems that you can use to do that. And you know, feel free to send me an email, or I'd be glad to talk more about that if you have interest in it.
Here's an important question regarding the status of RELMA. The comment or the question is, with modern fire terminology services and APIs available, should RELMA evolve from a standalone mapping tool into a more integrated terminology platform?
Okay, we're still exploring where we're gonna go next with Rama. We will continue to support what we currently publish until we have either a tool that we can point to as a replacement, or we publish one, and there's a lot of different options out there.
And here's an earlier question, and perhaps this person wasn't available for the previous answer, so we should probably reiterate. Will each release be cumulative of all changes when we go to monthly releases? For example, if our team would prefer to implement updates quarterly, will pulling codes quarterly suffice, or do we need to pull, merge, dedupe monthly releases to get there?
There will be full releases, like we mentioned before. So you could pull the quarterly releases or quarterly, and that would suffice. Yeah, it's up to you.
Here's another question. I think this may be again a Stan or Isa question. How are the lab orders .ontology codes being used today? Are the major labs beginning to use them as order LOINCs?
So my impression is yes, they are being used, and that we don't have any good way of, you know, saying, you know, 3 people are using them or 10 people or 100 people. But what I directly from several of the large commercial labs, they said, wow, thank you so much for these codes, because we've been struggling because, you know, the codes that people use to order typically ignore the method. They don't even want the end user to tell them the method to use to do the analysis. They just want to say, you know, please give me a measurement of the, you know, whether there's gonorrhea DNA or not. And so, yeah, I don't have any way of, we haven't got an easy way to poll all of the labs to know what they're doing. What I can say is that the LOINC, many of the LOINC codes that we made correspond to what you see when you go look at the catalogs of the commercial laboratories online. They say things like measurement of, instead of saying, you know, a specific, you know, that measurement of this thing by GCMS or measurement of this thing by, they just say measurement of the primary analyte they're interested in. And that, again, serve 2 purposes. One, to make them eligible and useful for ordering, and also as groupers of the results that come from those tests. And Pam Banning, she's probably on, I don't know if she can talk or not, but Pam might be able to say more. She is over that lab group, and
She did offer a comment. She said that the lab committee is preparing guidance for how to use those lab order .ontology codes.
great.
And here's another question, the topic of pre-coordination versus post-coordination. Will you provide mapping between pre-coordination and post-coordination parts?
We need to, and I would like to. But it's one of those things that, it's a good thing to do, and we need to know where that fits with other, requirements and our limited resources. So we'd love to do that. If you're interested, again, I'd be glad to visit with you, because it's really, it's not that hard to do, and it's extremely useful. So we agree with the need. We don't have any current commitment to do that, but we're certainly interested. And if we could get a consortium of people together, and maybe we could do it as in-kind contributions or something, we could do that and make it available.
I think this is a different topic, different direction. The question is how LOINC coding integrates with the health insurance coding in each country.
So I don't know the answer to that.
I think that's a case by case,
Yeah.
Uh,
But
this is Marjorie, I think that's a case by case example. I don't think there's one solution for each country. There are different reimbursement code sets in various countries. They have different structures, rules, etc. But it's an interesting question.
We have been approached by one.
Yes, we've been
Yeah,
approached by,
but there is potential.
yeah,
Yes.
We're running to the end, but there's a question here that I think I can help answer. And I think it's a question that I think is in my wheelhouse for the level of pedantry. Does the C in LOINC stand for code? So saying LOINC codes is like saying PIN number or ATM machine. Yes, you're correct.
it's exactly like that.
And then
Yes.
the follow-up is I want to make sure I'm saying it correctly. And I will add that it is LOINC as in oink, which is why our mascot is a pig. So if you haven't made that connection, now you know. Yeah, and as Pam, again, our lab chairperson, said, I like to say LOINC terms to avoid that redundancy. So I think that's probably our preferred method, LOINC terms or LOINC concepts.
One other thing, I wanted to give our SNOMED partners an opportunity to clarify or rebuttal to anything I said about the LOINC Ontology. So I don't know if you guys have anything that you wanted to clarify or correct that I said in my part about the LOINC Ontology.
Hi, this is Peter Williams here. No, Stan, you nailed it. That was great. Nothing to add here. I don't know if Farzani does though.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
No,
Thanks, Stan.
nothing to add from me. That was perfect. Thanks, Stan.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Farzani.
all right. Does that conclude our questions?
Excellent.
So thank you, everyone, on behalf of Regenstrief, the Health Data Standards Division, and our LOINC Committee chairs and co-chairs. We thank you for joining us today. As you can see, we are saying thank you in 57 different languages, reflecting the true global community that makes LOINC possible. Your questions, your insights, and ongoing partnerships are incredibly valuable to us. The strength of LOINC is grounded in this very active and collaborative community, and your input directly informs how we continue to evolve and steward LOINC. We hope today's webinar has been informative and useful in supporting the work and implementation efforts. We look forward to staying connected, and we hope to see many of you at the next community webinar in the summer and the LOINC conference in October. We'll also send out the survey if you didn't get a chance to answer online during the webinar. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day.